Hey up! I'm Ned Stark from television's Game of Thrones, and this is one of the famous Stark direwolves, Ghost. I'm riding down the King's Road to confront Cersei Lannister about a terrible truth that I've learned. Because I'm an idealist, I'm confident she'll do the right thing when I confront her. But let's see how it goes. Winter is coming. Hello and welcome to today's video. In today's video, I want to do a scene analysis of Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 7. This is the famous scene where Ned Stark confronts Cersei Lannister about a secret he has discovered. This is an interesting scene for us to look at. In fact, this whole season and the early seasons of Game of Thrones are interesting for us to look at the moment because they really do exemplify some crucial points about the differences and the clashes between idealism and realism. You can get a long way in understanding Game of Thrones and in understanding idealism and realism by accepting the analysis that the Starks are essentially idealists. They're about honour and tradition and doing the right thing, and the Lannisters are essentially realists. They're about winning. They're pretty cynical. They're obsessed with power. This comes to a head somewhat in the scene we're going to watch today where Ned confronts Cersei. So let's get into it. It's actually a pretty nice piece of cinematography here. As Cersei enters the scene, she blocks out the sunlight and also assumes a dominant position over Ned.
You're in pain.
I've had worse, my lady.
Perhaps it's time to go home. The South doesn't seem to agree with you.
This is a constant trope in the early seasons of Game of Thrones that the Starks don't do well in the south of Westeros. The Starks are from the north, where a lot of politics is done by tradition and loyalty and honour, whereas in the south it's more of a cynical and cutthroat game. Ideal territory for realists like the Lannisters, very difficult territory for idealists like the Starks.
You know the truth Jon Arryn died for.
Do you, Lord Stark? Is that why you called me here to pose me riddles? My brother's worth 1,000 of your friend.
Your brother? Or your lover?
So you can see throughout this that Ned is convinced he has the upper hand. He's learnt Cersei's secret. Cersei is pretty unperturbed though by Ned knowing this secret.
Do you love your children?
With all my heart.
No more than I love mine.
And they're all Jaime's.
Thank the gods. In the rare event that Rob leaves his whores for long enough to stumble drunk into my bed, I finish him off in other ways. In the morning, he doesn't remember.
You've always hated him.
Hated him? I worshipped him. Every girl in the Seven Kingdoms dreamed of him, but he was mine by oath. And when I finally saw him on our wedding day in the Sept of Baelor, lean and fierce and black-bearded, it was the happiest moment of my life.
Ned is of course appalled that Cersei would have remained in a essentially loveless marriage. For idealists, you should only form alliances with people to whom you have a deep connection. For a realist, of course, forming an alliance, even an alliance like a marriage, should be done based on strategy. Robert's a terrible husband, but he's a very powerful man. And to a realist, that's a compelling argument for maintaining the alliance.
And that night he crawled on top of me stinking of wine and did what little he could do. And whispered in my ear, Lyanna. Your sister was a corpse and I was a living girl, and he loved her more than me.
Again, of course, to an idealist like a Stark, you would leave at that point. To a realist like a Lannister, the alliance still maintains some strategic value, and so you stay.
When the king returns from his hunt, I'll tell him the truth. You must be gone by then. You and your children. I will not have their blood on my hands.
Now here is the key idealist mistake made by Ned Stark. He has a devastating piece of information on Cersei, but he doesn't drive home his advantage immediately. He instead gives her the chance to get away. He's doing the right thing. He's saying, I have this devastating, game-ending piece of information, and so you should leave, or I will reveal it. That's a very idealist thing to do, a very honourable thing to do.
Go as far away as you can, with as many men as you can. Because wherever you go, Robert's wrath will follow you.
And what of my wrath, Lord Stark? You should have taken the realm for yourself. Jaime told me about the day King's Landing fell. He was sitting in the Iron Throne and you made him give it up. All you needed to do was climb the steps yourself. Such a sad mistake.
Again, to an idealist like Ned, this isn't a mistake. He didn't want to be king, he's not suited to southern politics, he has no inherent drive for power. This is close to incomprehensible to a realist like Cersei.
I've made many mistakes in my life, but that wasn't one of them.
Oh, but it was. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win, or you die.
And there it is, that is the classic realist line uttered by Cersei. When you play the Game of Thrones, when you operate in international politics, you win or you die. The stakes are literally that high. And to a realist, the only form of morality is winning, because the alternative is dying. Well, so there we have it, a classic scene from Game of Thrones showing the difference between idealists and realists. And of course, we know that Cersei did not leave, did not do what Ned Stark had invited her to do, but instead plotted a way to turn the situation to her advantage, and to Ned Stark's very distinctive disadvantage. Now, there's a lot in here that you might say supports the realist point of view. Cersei wins this interaction. Ned Stark, quite literally, loses his head. But remember, of course, that idealists said the problem with realism is not that it might be successful in the short run. The problem with realism is that in the long run, by treating everything as a cynical game of power politics, it essentially becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You end up with escalating cycles of violence that become unstoppable. And after all, what happened to the Lannisters in Game of Thrones? It wasn't like the other Starks just said, you chopped our dad's head off. Never mind, it's our fault for being naive idealists. That isn't at all what happened. So that's realism and idealism. It's time in the next video for an entirely new theory.
There was a bear there, all black and brown and covered in hair. 3 boys, a goat, and a dancing bear.